Welcome to Rock Your Life with Arian Alexander. This is your place to be for all things mastering your mindset, developing your spirituality, having a ton of fun. And today it's about going behind the scenes in Hollywood. Who doesn't want to know a little dish about Hollywood? Well, you're going to love my guest today. It's Dana Buckler. He has a very successful podcast called The Dana Buckler Show, which is all about all things Hollywood. And here on Fun for Life Radio, he also has a show called Hollywood Unfiltered, which is exactly what you think it is. It's unfiltered Hollywood, interviews with directors, producers, writers, actors, all kinds of people in the business to give you an insider's look at what's going on in the entertainment business. So excited to talk to him today. Hi, Dana. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I am such a fan of everything that you do, and I'm a huge fan of your show here on Fun for Life Radio. I listen every week, and so getting an opportunity to spend an hour talking with you is just an absolute pleasure. So thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, you're so welcome. It's so fun. Well, I love our love fest. We're like, we can girl fan over each other, even though I guess you're boy fanning. Whatever that is. It's good. So the reason I wanted to interview Dana today for all of you listening is because he has this really cool journey of life. And he started out as a DJ in Canada, and now he's in Florida doing all these cool things. And it's really a testimony to me of the journey of life and how we have no freaking clue what's going to happen, but we all have this extraordinary journey if we actually pay attention to it and listen to it. So Dana, tell me a little bit in your words, what you thought you were going to be when you grew up. Like, what was this plan that you had for yourself?
That's a wonderful question. And I want to apologize to the listeners up front because sometimes I do tend to give some long-winded answers. So you feel free to stop me at any point if I start rambling. The journey, where do I begin? What did I want to do with my life? Like most, I'm going to start at the age 14. Like most 14-year-olds, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I was just living life in Halifax, Nova Scotia. By that point, if you weren't going to be a hockey player, it was really tough to figure out what you were going to do with your life, because by that point, you knew whether or not you were going to play professional hockey. That's how serious people took it where I was from. I wanted to talk about getting home from school at the end of the school year. I come home ready for summer break. I noticed that my parents are both home, which was a little bit unusual in the sense that they worked during the day. And I came home and my parents called a family meeting, which at the time I wasn't too stressed out about because the last time they had called a family meeting, we took a trip to Disney World. So I was excited about the idea of a family meeting. That being said, my mom is a physician. And she sat us down and said, what do you guys know about the state of Tennessee? That would be like me grabbing someone on the street here in Orlando and saying, what do you know about Saskatchewan in Canada? Like, there's no compute there. Well, it turns out that my mom had accepted a position at a hospital in a rural part of Tennessee, about 45 minutes north of Knoxville. And in 6 weeks, we're moving there. So whatever aspirations, dreams, or ideas I had as far as what I was going to do with my life in Canada, that was out the window, because in 6 weeks, my entire world is about to change. We're about to just journey into the complete unknown. And at age 14, my family and I, we packed up our cars and a moving truck and we moved to a town called Tazewell, Tennessee. And that is where the journey of life really began for me. So I spent my high school years in a very rural part. I keep saying rural because I emphasize it was a town of 2,000 people. I was happy, but I felt like I was missing out on something. And so after I graduated high school, I said, well, I'm going back. So I said goodbye to my parents and hopped a plane back to Halifax. Had no idea what I was going to do. Didn't have much money. Didn't really have a plan, but I knew that I wanted to do something else. I didn't just want to go directly to college and that wasn't my journey. And I knew that even at 18 years old. So the idea was get a little apartment in Halifax, get a job, and then figure out what you want to do. The first day that I was back there, reunited with some friends, we ended up going to a nightclub, which I had never been to a nightclub. I actually technically wasn't even old enough to be in there, but we got in. And it was the first time that I heard the kind of music that they only play at nightclubs. Because this is the 90s, remember. The only thing we hear on the radio or MTV is what they want you to hear. There's no YouTube, there's no streaming, there's no anything. And I was just completely mesmerized by what I was seeing, the dance floor. The guy up in the booth, the way he had command of the dance floor. And while my friends were trying to meet ladies, I was so transfixed on what this guy was doing that was the moment right then. The light bulb went off. And I said, this is what I want to do. And then I began an odyssey to become the best DJ possible. And I'll tell you what, Arian, one of the things that I look back on that time was I had no fear whatsoever. And I was not afraid to take any challenge or any gig that was offered to me, any opportunity. I would reach out to every DJ I could find and say, let me just help you. Let me help you set up your equipment. Let me help you do whatever. And just slowly but surely began to sort of build a little bit of a residency in town, and then realized that I had gone as far as I could in Halifax. And so I had a decision to make. Do I move to the big city of Toronto, which was where it was at in Canada, or do I take the opportunity to come back to the United States because I had a green card at the time. I was able to legally come back to the country, and I chose Florida. And so that's part one of my journey.
Wow. Well, it's cool. I just want to pause there because it's very cool. There's a few things you said that I think are very important. And the first thing is, like, you didn't take the normal route of an 18-year-old where you're expected to, I don't know, go to college, be in a job. You know, I'm from Kansas, and I always say in Kansas, you grow up, you go to college, you get married, you have a couple kids, you're in a job you may or may not like, you're in a marriage you may or may not like, but that's what you do. And I am one of those people that chose a different path. And you're one of the people that chose a different path. From whatever was expected of you as a normal kid growing up, you at a young age went, you know what, this doesn't feel like this is my path. And I think that's very cool. And the reason I want to point that out is, even if you're listening to the radio show right now and you're like, oh, well, I did the normal path, and I'm not really happy. The good news is there's still a choice point. There's still opportunities to create different things in your life. So even if you have done the quote normal thing that was expected of you, it's okay. And it got you to where you are today, and you have an opportunity to shift it. But I think it's cool for you, Dana, that you knew that. And then you went in this different path. And you also said you had no fear. And I'm like, I love that, because I think that's part of, for me, I look back and I think it's part of being younger. It's like, you know, we don't know, basically. We don't know what we don't know. We're just like, yeah, fuck it, I'm going to do it, whatever. So for you to have no fear and just go for things is a huge, you know, asset to this journey of life. And I'm curious, as we talk through, I'm curious of how that shows up for you today, and, you know, kind of what fear, because I feel like as we get older, the fears come up more. Like the mental mind comes up and can hold us back from things. So I'm curious of that. I want to get more in this journey of how you got to where you are as the radio shows that you have now. But I definitely want to come back to this place about fear. So
2 points on what you just said there, especially when you said that anyone listening that's taken the what we'll call the sort of the traditional journey, and they're thinking that they're not happy with where they're at. I want to emphasize, I mentioned that my mom is a physician. She was a housewife with 4 children in her early 30s who made the decision that this is not what I want to do. I want to do more with my life. And so with 4 kids, she applied, got accepted to university, got a Bachelor of Science, was one of the first women to be accepted into the medical school program in the 80s in Halifax, because it was really a male-driven thing back then. And I remember, you know, I didn't see much of her growing up because she was pursuing this passion, but that's always my inspiration when even in my 40s right now, saying it's okay if you don't know what you want to do, because you can absolutely do anything you want. So that's one point I always like to bring up. And the second,
amazing.
she really is, and she just retired last year. She's 73 years old and just retired, and did emergency room work the entire time.
Oh my God, amazing!
just an incredible person. I talk to her almost 3 or 4 times a week. We're still very, very close. The other point I wanted to bring with what you said about the no fear is I also want to emphasize that I failed miserably in the beginning, but it never stopped me. I mean, there were times when you want to talk about the DJs having control of the dance floor. When I first started, I was known for emptying the dance floor, but
that's funny. Yes. And that is part of it, right? It's like, if we're going to, I love, I don't know if you've ever listened to anything from Brene Brown, but oh my gosh, if you haven't, you, Dana, any of you listening, go put on your Netflix queue, The Call to Courage from Brene Brown. It's awesome. She's a hugely successful TEDx talk around shame, and she's a shame researcher, but it's just so inspiring what she speaks of. And what she talks about is when she works with corporate executives and they say, well, because she's always like, you have to go outside your comfort zone, and your people have to go outside their comfort zone to create what's next. And she says, and you're going to fail. And the corporate executives, like the CEO, will be like, well, we'll try it. And, but we might not fail, and then we'll do it. And she's like, no, you're not hearing me. You're going to fail. And if you don't get it, that you're going to fail, then you're still going to hold yourself back. And I love that, because it's like we as, I don't know, people that go for things, or type A's, or whatever you want to call it. It's like, there can still be this expectation that it's going to work out okay, and I'm going to make it happen. Da, 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 da. And when the realism comes in of like, yeah, you're going to do things, and sometimes you're going to be really good at them, and a lot of the times you're going to fail miserably. You're going to clear the dance floor a few times before you fill the dance floor. And just knowing that up front, for me, takes the pressure off of like, you're going to kind of suck at things for a while, and then maybe you'll get better. But that takes the pressure off. But I think as adults, we want everything to be so perfect all the time that it's hard to be in that space. So I love that you did that, that you got that at an early age. You didn't care. You just did it, and you failed, and whatever. And then it got you to the next step. But it could be possibly different today.
I look back at that. This is 20 something years ago. And I, as again, someone in their 40s, I have to summon that courage a lot sometimes, because, there's new things in life I want to challenge myself to do. And sometimes I have to go back to that 18-year-old kid who emptied out the dance floor. And then a month later had 2 people on the dance floor, and 4 months later had 5 people, and just remember that. So I love what you said there. And that's absolutely true. And it's crazy how sometimes when we get older, we lose some of that courage.
Totally. Things get scary, and the stakes seem higher, and all that. Yeah, it's very interesting. So then you had so you went to Florida, you were a DJ. That's like this dream, and you're doing it. The dance floor is full. You're successful. But you had some hearing loss. It's about this transition point.
Not to skip ahead all the way to 2012, but I just want to point out a couple highlights. Like, moved to Orlando, got better, started doing shows all over Florida, started to get flown out to different parts of America to perform at different venues, won a couple Battle of the DJ competitions. So I was able to, just want to let everybody know, I was able to keep the dance floor going for a while. So I was. That's
amazing. You're one of those DJs like on the beach, like everyone's boom, 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 like dance for full, sweaty, sexy Florida, like we think. And
that's exactly
exciting.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
To be doing it.
And it was I'm always very honest with people that I let that lifestyle get to me a little bit, as far as, the party would go very late into the evening and sleep all day. And, I famously have said multiple times that I'm not exactly sure what I did in my 20s, but I had a great time doing it. I literally have to say, when somebody says, well, what were you doing when you were 26? I'll go, well, what year was that? I just need to know what year that was. Okay, I know exactly what I was doing. And I don't mean like doing like hard drugs or anything like that, but just, it was nonstop, 6-7 days a week, year in, year out. And
totally. You're just living the baller lifestyle.
Yeah. So
my joke is when people are like, when I see like people in their 20s and they're already like working and have a house and taking care of a family. And I was like, I was drunk in my 20s. Like, I'm like you, like, what was I doing? I was drinking. Are you kidding me? We were just partying. So I'm always impressed when people actually have an impressive life at a young age. For you to have your baller lifestyle.
Great times, great memories, great friends, great experiences, and would not trade any of that. I don't have a lot of regrets in life, and I certainly regret nothing about choosing that career path. I had the time of my life.
Good.
I really did. And right around like 2011, 2012, I started to notice that when I was talking to people, my friends would kind of joking around say, you don't have to be so loud all the time, Dana. Like, you don't have to be so, You're always yelling at us when you're talking. And I never noticed that. I didn't realize that was the case. And so I got a hearing test, and it was basically explained to me that, yeah, you've suffered some hearing loss in both ears, and that's never going to come back. And if you continue this lifestyle, you're going to be deaf by the time you're 50 years old. And that's just a reality. And that is sort of one of the hazards of these nightclub DJs. And I look at some of my favorite DJs in the world. Like I'm talking like the Armin van Burens, the Tiestos, the Paul Van Dykes, like the big guys, like my big inspiration guys. And these guys are pushing their 50s. And I'm saying, how are they still doing it? How are they doing it? How can these guys? I mean, I was doing it half as much as them, and I lost a lot of my hearing. In 2012, I just made that soul-crushing decision that I am not going to do this anymore. And I was really beating myself up about it not because I knew I was going to miss doing it. I knew I was going to miss the joy I had of being a performer, of ensuring that for the next 4 hours, everybody in this room is going to have a great time, and you are going to be partially responsible for that. I loved that. I loved doing that. But why I was really beating myself up was because I'm now in my mid-30s, and I have no idea what to do with my life at this point. And I know I gave that inspiring talk about, what my mom did, but when you're faced with that reality, when you've only done one thing your adult life, it really became, what do I do now? Do I go to college? I didn't even go to college. Like, I don't even know what to do. So I dealt with that for about 6 months. And I'll tell you this right now, that was a really tough 6 months.
Yeah, no doubt. I can imagine, because when you are faced with that, when you don't know what's next and you don't have the plan, what was it with you? What was the spark?
My other passion in life has always been movies in the entertainment industry. And if we could just rewind back to 14 years old, living in Canada, even 14, 13, 12 years old, every Saturday, my dad would do the weekly grocery shopping. And I would go with him, not because I liked walking down the aisles of a grocery store on a Saturday morning missing cartoons, but because there was a mom and pop's video store right next to the grocery store. And I used to go in there every Saturday, and I would just walk the aisles, and I would just look at all these VHS covers, and I would just read them and study them and just say, someday I'm going to watch all of these. And as I kept moving, when we moved to Tennessee, and then when I moved to Florida, and when I moved to Florida, I didn't know anyone. So like my best friend was the video store. I was there all the time, and I just consumed movies and just became so passionate about them and wanted to learn as much as I could. And I love to watch Entertainment Tonight every night. And I mean, these were just really big things for me. So you asked about the spark. I got my first iPhone in 2012. I'm just kind of going through the features of it, and I click on the podcast app. And Arian, I didn't even know what a podcast was. I'm like,
Amazing.
What is this? What is this? And so I open it up and I start going through it. I'm like, well, there's podcasts about everything in here. Whatever topic you're interested in. If it's real estate or wine or food or music, there's something for everybody. So I just clicked on one about movies and I started listening to it. I'm like, these guys are just really breaking down a movie I really like. This is awesome. I could do this. This is something I could do. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do a podcast. How do you do a podcast? I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to start doing it. And so I remember telling my friends, I said, well, I'm going to start podcasting. And I promise you, 100% of them said to me, okay, what's a podcast? which is such a common, term now. But back in 2012, I mean, they were popular. Rogan had been doing his podcast since 2009, but they were not mainstream. And I'd spend the first 15 minutes explaining exactly what a podcast was. And then I would go into what I'm going to do a podcast about. And just like when I started DJing, I had no fear. I got the equipment I needed, everything I needed, and I started and I released my first few episodes and nobody listened. They were terrible.
Right? Yep. As it should be.
That's what started the journey that brings me to where I am today. And
oh my God. This is so good.
It was,
there's so many things I want to Yeah, there's
Please.
so many cool things in here. I want to take a quick break, but there's some things that you've said that I want to come back to just for us all to really get and understand, because this is so powerful. So you're listening to Fun for Life Radio. This is Rock Your Life with Arian Alexander, and we'll be right back.
Fun for Life Radio, because fun is habit forming.
And we're back. And if you haven't listened to some of our other shows on Fun for Life Radio, there's so many great shows that we're a music-based radio station and we're talk-based. So you get a great mixture of both. Some of the music shows you might want to listen to is the St. James Band Radio Hour, with this very cool mix of music that you are going to just like chill out to and relax to. And then we've got some bumpin' tunes with DJ Ceviche and DJ Basie with their shows that are, a little more along the lines of like dancing, a little bit of techno, some unique sounds you won't have heard before. So definitely check out our music shows and our talk shows here on Fun for Life Radio. And we love being part of the Dash Radio family. And I'm talking today with my friend Dana Buckler, who also has a show here on Fun for Life Radio called Hollywood Unfiltered. Definitely listen to his show for all kinds of cool interviews with people in all walks of the entertainment business. So Hollywood Unfiltered, you will love. And here he is, the man himself, Dana Buckler. And Dana, you were talking about this journey from being a DJ, like you knew you wanted to be a DJ. It was your dream. You were doing it. You're living this baller lifestyle. Then you find out you have hearing loss and you have to do something else. So that switch, there was so much disappointment in that. But you had to, life was like, well, you have to do something different. And so there's that disappointment of like the dream being crushed. And I see this all the time with clients, because and what I experience is we have this dream that we want to create. And then if it doesn't manifest, it can be with anything. I'm talking about like a business. It can be a relationship. Oh my God, I see this all the time with my clients. I would say the female clients that I deal with around relationships. Like they're like, this guy, he was my dream and he's not my guy. So then they're so disappointed. But I'm like, well, he can't really be your guy if he's not your guy. You know what I mean? But when we're in it, like there's so much disappointment in the dream being crushed and this fantasy being crushed. And what I'm always encouraging my clients to do is it's like be in life with high involvement and low attachment. And it's a very, very challenging line to walk. But it's like life will continue to show us where we're supposed to go. So you're going to have disappointments and not everything is going to work out. And so what I find is when clients, they're like fighting to hold on to this dream. Like you could have fought to hold on to that dream of being a DJ. You could have just lost your hearing. You know what I mean? You could have kept doing it, whatever, fighting to hang on to it instead of dealing with the disappointment that like life is showing you that there's a change happening. And that's what I think is really important for any of you listening to understand, that whatever in your life that you don't get or that you don't win at or you're not successful at, it doesn't mean you're a loser and it doesn't mean you need to continue doing it. It can simply be life is showing you that there's a different path. And in that, there's going to be disappointment. There's going to be grieving. There's going to be sadness possibly, but it's when we can accept that and appreciate it and use it to move forward in the next thing, then it makes the transition a whole lot easier. So I think it's cool that you acknowledge that, like, you did have to give up the dream. And it was disappointing. And it took you about 6 months to be like, what am I going to do? And then this spark from another passion came forward into doing podcasts. Nobody was doing podcasts, which is so cool. So I'm curious in that moment too, because that's like what I call a God shot. Like when we actually listen, like it's easy for us as humans to be like, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. And this is what's next and and like mentally make this like list of things, which is cool because that is helpful. But there's also the God shots when we actually shut our fucking mouths and shut our eyeballs and like listen to what spirit is saying and actually listen to that guidance. That's a God shot. So you had a God shot of like, oh wait, like I loved this thing. And then you happen to get an iPhone and you happen to open podcasts and you went, oh, so a lot of people would have opened the podcast and been like, well, that's interesting and that sounds fun. Oh, but I could never do it because of this, and this. Do you see? Like the God shot came in, but you in that moment said yes instead of saying no. So I'm curious for you, because I like to get really specific to help everyone listening, like, understand how to be with yourself differently. What is it within you that in that moment said yes instead of saying no?
Great question. It's because I remember listening to that first podcast episode that on that particular movie and just going, these guys are good. They're good, but I think I could add to this conversation. So I think I need to figure out how to add to this conversation. So I have no idea how to do this, but I'm going to figure out what to do. And I'm going to make a run at this no matter what. And that's kind of, it was the idea that I was enamored by what these guys were doing. And just like I was enamored by that DJ 20 years ago in the DJ booth. And I just said, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. And I have no idea where this is going to take me. No idea, but I'm going to do it.
You were in the journey. You weren't like in this destination of like, I'm going to have a successful podcast and make hundreds of thousands of dollars and da-da-da. And I think that's also where we get tripped up as humans, is focusing on this end result all the fucking time. Like this thing, like the brass ring. When I get the thing, then I'll be successful. When one of my mentors is always like, just be in the work. Just be in the work, which in my words is just be in the journey. Like, you're going to do a podcast, just be in the journey of the podcast. Like, let that lead instead of this end result that can be elusive and then, again, like disappointing when you don't get it. So I love that you were like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm just going to start doing it. And that's what got you to where you are today.
I knew about a year into it that I had made the right decision because there was a lot of serendipity that started happening with this podcast. There was a lot of things that I always want to tell this story, and I'll tell it very quickly. I am a big believer in there are no coincidences. Sometimes I think sometimes there's a destiny and there's a path. I can sometimes pinpoint events that happen in my life and backtrack them 10 years back. If I hadn't done this, none of this would have happened. I remember in 2002, I was a little under the weather. I ended up not DJing one night, and I was up till 2:00 in the morning, and I came across this really small independent film that was playing on Cinemax or Showtime at 2:00 in the morning, and it was called Entropy, and it starred Stephen Dorff. And it was about a music video director who's going to get his big shot doing his first Hollywood feature film, and sort of how everything just kind of collapses around him. I thought the movie was really interesting. The fact that they had U2 in the movie really, I thought that was incredible. So I watched this movie. I can never find it again. I remember going to the video store. I remember going to the video stores for years, for like 4 or 5 years, looking for this movie. I could never find it. So
it never happened.
Exactly. So now listen to this, Arian. Listen to this. So 2 years into podcasting, I have a regular guest on the show. His name is Jim Hemphill. He's become a very good friend of mine. He's a writer, director. He writes for a lot of movie publications. He emails me one day and says, Dana, I want you to meet my friend Phil Joannou. Phil has a new movie coming out on Netflix called The Veil with Thomas Jane and Jessica Alba. And I just think that you two would really get along. This is just a CC'd email, and I write Phil back, hey, Phil, very nice to meet you. Can you send me a screener? Let me see the movie. So this is really before online screener. So a week later, I get a FedEx package with just a Blu-ray, one of those Blu-ray copies where it just on Sharpie says The Veil, the name of the movie, and I put it in my Blu-ray. And by that point, I was getting sent a lot of screeners, and I always told everybody that sent me them, I'm delighted to watch your movie. I can't guarantee that I'll ask you to be on the show, but I'll certainly watch your movie. And that was the same thing I said to Phil. I'm looking forward to watching. And I put the movie on. It's an hour and a half psychological horror movie. And I was really digging it. And I really enjoyed it. And so I emailed Phil back and said, hey, Phil, listen, I really love this movie. Could you maybe come on the show and let's talk a little bit about, the development of the film and how you got involved and all that stuff. He says, great. Yeah, let's do it. So I set it up. And I don't know who Phil is. So I IMDb Phil. And I start looking at his filmography. And he did 3 O'Clock High, which is one of my favorite teen comedies of the 80s. He did the U2 Rattle and Hum documentary that came, music concert film, Final Analysis, State of Grace, the Gridiron Gang with The Rock, and a little independent film that came out in 1999 called Entropy, which blew my mind. And I've had Phil as a regular guest on my show probably 15 times over the past few years, and we still talk on a weekly basis. He's become one of my close friends. And to me, that can't be a coincidence. There's just no way that can be a coincidence.
No, and it's such a great example of when you follow that God shot, whatever you want to call it, and you start down in the journey of what you're here to do, call it being in the flow, whatever it is, then that's where the synchronicities and miracles really start happening, because you're in alignment with what you're supposed to be doing. So it's kind of like when the doors keep opening, you just say yes and keep walking through them. When they say no continually over and over and over, it might be time to course correct and take a different path, because when the doors keep opening, the synchronicities and the serendipity keeps happening, you know you're in the right track, because life's like, yeah, let's help out this person. This is cool. We love this. And you have a perfect example of that. And I know you have even more examples of that, because you told me this crazy, amazing story involves a huge, huge movie star that was so synchronistic. So why don't you walk us through? You have your show, the Dana Buckler Show, where you're interviewing, you're doing movie reviews and you're interviewing all kinds of cool people. And then take us through what happens next of like what really impacted your show.
And thank you. I love telling this story because it's been almost 2 years and I still get jitters and butterflies thinking about this. So to understand this real quick is to know that I have an ongoing series on my show called Icons, where we look at the careers of really prominent figures in the industry, from directors to actors. We've done shows on Quentin Tarantino, Burt Reynolds, all over the place, Oliver Stone. And then we did one on John Travolta, who, of course, is one of my all-time favorite actors. And it was myself and my friend Jim Hemphill, and we just spent 2 hours talking about John's career, starting in the 70s, all the way through the 80s, to the huge comeback in the 90s, right down to what he was doing in 2019. We're always very honest about how we feel about the people that we're talking about. And we were both adamant that even when John's in what I would call sort of I don't want to say a lesser movie, but a smaller production than what he was doing in the 90s, and maybe that movie is not as well received, we always agreed that he disappears into whatever character he plays. And you cannot take that away from him. He is a phenomenal actor. So we released that episode. I don't think anything of it. It's just another one of the Icon series. And that's April of 2019. August of that year, I'm having dinner with my then girlfriend at a restaurant. Now, I'm in Florida. John has property in Florida. There is another restaurant here in town that John sends his assistants and whatnot to this restaurant, because the rumor was that I hung out there. And I get a call from a guy who works at the restaurant. He says, "You're not going to believe this, but John Travolta's people were in here and they're looking for you. And John wants your phone number." I'm like, "What?"
What?
I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "What the fuck? Excuse me, what?"
Yeah, what?
And he goes, "John wants your phone number." And I remember very clearly saying, "Well, did you give it to him?"
Exactly.
and they're like, yeah, absolutely, we gave it to him. So I was telling my girlfriend at the time, I said, "I think John Travolta's going to call me tonight." And she's like, "What the hell is going on?" I said, "I don't know. Apparently he's listening to the podcast," which, make no mistake about it, like, I didn't even tag him in a post when I was promoting this thing, and so
Wow.
I wait up all night for a phone call that never comes. And the next day I'm at my podcast studio. I'm there with a couple buddies of mine. I get a phone number from a number I don't recognize. And I said, oh, this is it. And I pick up the phone. I'm like, "Hey, hello." And the voice goes, "Dana." And I go, "John?" And the guy goes, No. This is Ron. This is John's assistant. And I said, "Oh, hi, Ron. How are you?" He goes, "Well, we're not great, Dana." I said, "What's going on, Ron?" He said, "Well, we're trying to get John on his plane, but he won't get on the plane until you answer him back." And I went, "I don't have anything to answer back to." And you hear him kind of fumbling with the phone, and he just goes, "Oh, shit." He goes, "Hang on, Dana, I gave him the wrong number. Hold on." And I'm just like, what is happening? What is going on?
Oh my gosh.
And then 5 minutes later, the phone rings and it's John. And I'm just like, "How are you?" And we just start talking. And then he's like, "I got to get on the plane." And we switch to text messaging. And I lose him for a little bit when he's flying, but when he lands, we just start texting. We're texting all night, and we're just talking about all of his movies. And he just said, he goes, Dana, I haven't heard somebody since Quentin understand my career and the moves that I've made like you have. Like listening to you. It reminds me of what Quentin used to say. And he goes, I'm just so impressed with how much you know about me. And he goes, you get it. And I'm just like, I'm freaking out. I'm taking screenshots, blocking out his number, but I'm taking screenshots of his texts and I'm sending them to my friends. I'm like, look at this. Can you believe this? This is John Travolta. Wow. This is a guy I grew up with. I idolize this guy. So let's get back to No Fear, Arian.
Yeah.
So now I'm texting buddies with John Travolta. So I know he's got property. He spends some of his time in Florida. So I just said, you know what? Fuck it. All he can say is no. And so I just say, John, listen, I would really love to have a more in-depth conversation with you. Would you ever consider, doing a guest spot on my podcast? And 30 seconds later, he wrote back, I would love to. I'll be in I'll be in Florida next month. Let's set it up. I said, do I need to go through publicists or anything like this? No. We'll work this all out. Don't worry about it. And he goes, I'll get back to you the first of the month. This is September of 2019. First of the month, I get a text message from him. How's September 29th? I said, great. He said, how's 1 o'clock in the morning? And I went, sure.
Great.
No problem. So he apparently, a lot of times he sleeps during the day and is up all night. And we all do our own thing. So no worries there. So, Arian, I'm now consuming everything John Travolta. I'm watching every movie. I'm reading every article. I'm on YouTube watching every interview he gave on Johnny Carson in the 70s through Letterman in the 80s. I'm just consuming everything. I want to be as prepared as possible. Funny little side note to that story. I had been trying to book Peter Facinelli as a guest on the podcast for a couple of months. And I get a text from Peter Facinelli a week before the Travolta interview. And he says, hey, Dana, it's Peter. Listen, how about the 29th? And I said, the 29th's great. Let's do the 29th. And so that's how scattered my brain was. And I remember telling my friend, I said, hi, I'm so excited. I got Peter Facinelli on the show. This is so exciting. She's like, great. When? I said, the 29th. And she's like, aren't you doing Travolta that day? I'm like, oh my God, gosh. What have I done? So I actually did both interviews in one day. But so let's go to the 28th, the day before the interview. I'm now really freaking out because I'm stressed out because I don't have a green room for him to hang out in. I don't know what to do. So I text John. I say, what kind of specialty food and drinks do you need? Do you want sushi, steaks? Tell me what you need. M&Ms? I don't know. What do you got? What do you want? And he just texts back very nice and says, I just want some iced tea and some Fiji water. If you can make that happen, I'll be good to go. And I'm like,
so easy.
You got it, John. You got it. Flash forward the next day, Arian. I do the interview with Peter Facinelli in the afternoon. I get my recording studio ready for a guest. And he shows up at 1 o'clock in the morning. He knocks on the door, opens the door, and it's John Travolta. And I was just like, and ironically, we were both dressed identical. We were both wearing black V-neck T-shirts, jeans, and black shoes. And he just kind of said, he said, I like your tailor. I was like, yeah, you too. And he just right away gave me a hug. He said, just thank you for everything. I didn't know if I was going to get 5 minutes or 30 minutes. I did not know. He sat down and we recorded for 2.5 hours. And the only reason we didn't go longer is because I was out of gas mentally. I had nothing left in the tank. And if you listen to that interview, which is available on the Dana Buckler Show podcast, you'll hear me just go, thanks for coming out, John. It's been great talking with you. Like, I am out of gas. And afterwards, I said, can I just get some pictures with you for social media promotion? He said, Dana, when it comes to you and I, you write your own ticket, whatever you need. And then we ended up staying there till like 6 in the morning. There's a few of us and just chatted till about 6 in the morning. And then a week later, I released the episode and I couldn't believe the amount of publicists that started reaching out to me all of a sudden after that interview went out. And so that really put the trajectory of the podcast in a completely different level and was sort of the catalyst to how you and I are even talking right now on Fun for Life Radio.
Wow. That's amazing. It's, Oh my gosh. I mean, what a cool experience to, and again, it goes back to like, you were just in the journey. You weren't like, I'm going to do an icon show about John Travolta and then send it to his publicist and then maybe we can get him on the podcast. You just did it out of your pure like adoration and love for this person and the acting and the experience. And then somehow he heard it through synchronicity. And you told me earlier, like he'd been listening to your show, already. And then he heard this and was so inspired to reach out to you. But like, that's such a huge testimony to it's about doing the work and being in the flow, and the synchronicities will happen. And it's not always going to happen with John Travolta, right? But it's like the synchronicities of life will happen, which that hugeness of that relationship and having him as a guest, like changed the trajectory of your show in order to get you more, bigger stars and, names on your show, which of course obviously helps the show grow. So it's so cool. And again, like you said yes the whole way, because there's so many times you could have not asked him to be on the podcast, right? You could have been afraid and just been like, oh, well, he's a friend and I want to cross that line, blah, blah. But you totally asked and then set it up. Like you said yes so many times and went through that fear, and it paid off for you. It's so cool to hear the whole experience.
Yeah, and we still chat quite a bit from time to time. And I just going to be setting up a second interview, hopefully very soon. And I can just say this, of all the people I've interviewed, I've enjoyed chatting with every one of them. He was certainly probably the person I was the most intimidated about because it wasn't an interview happening over Zoom. It was happening in person. And yeah. I remember I was very, very nervous. And within 30 seconds of meeting him, I was as cool as ice. Like he is the nicest guy. It was so nice. Awesome.
So I have my little John Travolta story where I'm not besties with him like you are, but I worked with him on The People versus O.J. Simpson. If you're listening and you don't know, I also work as an actor in Hollywood. So I'm on all kinds of TV shows, and he was playing Robert Shapiro, the lawyer, on the show. And I was, of course, intimidated. Like, I'm like, it's John freaking Travolta. Like, he's the biggest star I've ever worked with on a show. I've worked with Academy Award winners and Emmy winners and but not like John Travolta. Like, he's a humongous worldwide star, right? So I get on set, and I don't know, everything's like NDAs, like everything's very secretive about these shows. And so all I know is like my role. I'm a reporter and I know I'm interviewing him, but like, I don't know what he's doing with the character. I just don't know anything walking into it. So we get on set, and he's all, that's set in the 1990s. So he's Robert Shapiro. So he's got a wig on. He's got maybe some prosthetics. Like he looks different than like John Travolta. And then he doesn't say a word because he's like in his character and he's doing his thing until we start rolling. And he's got this accent because he's playing this other person who has this different way of speaking that's different than John Travolta. And so the words start coming out of his mouth. And I just remember standing there and like the cameras were rolling and I was like, what is that? What is that accent? Like, who am I talking to? And but I do the scene, and it was just such a funny moment of being so intimidated, and then it's like a different person's voice is coming out, and I'm not used to it because I don't know what to expect, and I just am kind of frozen in that moment, and then I'm like, nope, just like, how do you look? Like, you got to just be a professional, like pretend like nothing weird is happening, it's all good, you can do this. And so it was just a little moment, but it's like he was definitely the consummate professional, and like he's got that star status. Like he walked on set and we were all like, fucking A, like it's fucking John Travolta. Like the charisma that comes with him is like, whoa, he's a movie star.
There was multiple times during that 2-hour recording where he's sitting across the table from me, just 3 feet away. And I'm just looking at him, and occasionally I'm just looking into his eyes, and I'm mentally checking myself like, what the fuck is going on? Like, how did you end up in this situation? Like, totally. I'm not upset I'm in this situation. I'm like, there's not even like a crowd around this. There is John Travolta. There's a friend of mine, and I had a co-host who was helping me with that interview. And there's just the 4 of us in this room and nobody knows this is happening in the world. And no one's going to know until I release this episode that this is even going on. Right. And I'm just like, how is this happening? And you're absolutely right. Like I pondered for a few minutes about, do I ask him? And then I just said, yeah, I have to. And to what you said about, I've seen you on that show. I've watched that show a couple of times. I think The People versus O.J. is incredible, and I think John is incredible in it. And I'm so happy you were a part of that show. It's awesome. Such a great show.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Okay, cool. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. You're listening to Fun for Life Radio, and we're part of the Dash Radio family.
Fun for Life Radio, your soundtrack to the game of life.
Okay, we're back with my guest, Dana Buckler. He has this amazing show called Hollywood Unfiltered here on Fun for Life Radio. And Dana, tell us about your show. Like, it's so cool. I love it. And I want everyone listening to go check it out. So tell me, what's the interesting thing and fun thing about Hollywood Unfiltered?
Well, the thing about Hollywood Unfiltered is that opportunity to continue what I was doing with the Dana Buckler Show and doing it in a different format, going out to a different audience. And I love it. I love continuing to talk to people in the industry, talking about their journey. I love talking about the headlines. I love talking about what's happening. We have a lot of discussion about, obviously this past year has been really just completely different than anything anyone has experienced. And has impacted the industry in Hollywood quite a bit. And I've spent a lot of time on the show talking about the changes that we've seen, what it means for movie theaters, what it means for film productions, television productions, and how much things have changed. And so we've been, over the past 4 or 5 months, we've really been sort of talking about those experiences and along the way having fun as well, because that's what we do on Fun for Life Radio. So it's not always just dour and, oh my God, things are looking so grim. We always try to put a positive spin on everything. It's like, yep, theaters are closed, but we know when they're coming back. So just keep listening. And so I have a blast doing it. And it's interesting. I got the show because of the John Travolta interview. That's a whole nother story.
Wow.
So,
wow. John Travolta, the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'll be happy to share that with you sometime if you ever want to hear that story. It's a lot of fun.
That's cool. Well, it's cool because it's just like, again, it goes back to that synchronicity. When you're just continuing to create good work and do this cool stuff, that the synchronicities just keep happening. And for you, I feel like, looking back over, you have the Dana Buckler Show and now Hollywood Unfiltered. And what do you see in this journey of life? Like, how do you keep, we talked about earlier, like the fear that can still come up. So how do you personally move through the fear that's still going to come up for you and for all of us into continue to say yes and move forward?
I think about the journey just over the past couple of years. And, I really like what you said. I don't have an end game. I don't know what's going to happen 6 months from now. And I still get hurt when I ask somebody to be on the show and I get rejected by a publicist, but I just keep on going. So I just keep, like you said, I just keep saying yes to everything I can do and just keep trying. I don't know where this ends, but I love the ride. I don't know how the story ends, but I love how it started. That's the best way I can say it.
That's so cool. I don't know how the story ends, but I love how it started. That's so cool. I love that. Well, even in that place of like you get, quote, rejected, like when people say no, and I put it in quotes because I don't use the word rejected with my clients, but when people say no, so you say, it doesn't feel good, it hurts. And then, but how do you move through that? Because that's the point where most people will be like, fuck it, I'm done. Like, I can't handle the no's. Whether, again, like it's in business, like making sales calls or reaching out to people, or in relationships, like putting yourself out there. I always feel that, like in dating, people are like, well, I just am so tired of rejection. And I'm like, what? I'm like, wait, how can you be rejected if it's not meant to be? Like, I don't understand. But that's me and my point of view. So I'm curious for you, you get these quote rejections, people say no. What do you do within yourself to continue to move on?
I have a philosophy that I sort of try to live by. When I was doing the podcast, when I first started out, over the first 3 or 4 years, I was getting a number of 5-star reviews on iTunes. People were saying how much they enjoy the podcast and probably had amassed 85 5-star reviews. And then one day I got a 1-star review and I was,
oh, boo.
And I was crushed. I lost sleep over it. I couldn't believe it. And I reached out to a really well-known podcaster. I emailed this person and I said, how did you deal with your first 1-star review? And he said, I didn't. I focused on the 85 5-star reviews that I got. And so when someone says no, especially when I'm trying to book people for the podcast, I just say, okay, well, that's all right. I've had this person on the show. I've had this person on the show. I've had this person on the show. And there's a record of that. And there's going to be a forever record of that. And if this publicist doesn't want to work with me, I'm going to move on to the next one who does. And I'm just going to keep going. So I'm not going to focus on the 1-star review. I'm going to focus on the 5-star reviews.
Wow, that's good. Yeah, you're really focusing on the gratitude for what is and not the, things that kind of take you off your game. So that's cool. It's good. It's good advice of just like really focusing on the good and just keeping to move forward, which is very cool. All right. Where can we find you on the social medias?
Sure. So I'm on Instagram at Real Dana Buckler. I'm on Twitter at Dana Buckler. The podcast is available wherever podcasts are found: Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google. And that's it. Yeah.
And then when is Hollywood Unfiltered here on Fun for Life Radio?
Yeah, absolutely. New episodes premiere every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Okay, cool. And then, okay, cool. So Tuesday, 8 a.m., come and listen to Hollywood Unfiltered. You can also listen to his Dana Buckler show on podcasts, wherever you find podcasts. So it's very cool. So if you were just to look back and if you were giving advice to your younger self, what would you tell 14-year-old Dana about life?
The short answer would be earplugs. But moving on,
Yes.
Moving on beyond that, I would just tell 14-year-old Dana that although some people have their entire life charted out from high school to college to career to retirement, it's completely okay if you don't, and just enjoy the journey, because that's the only thing that's going to keep you going is the journey. And never have an end game. Always have a journey.
I love that. Never have an end game. Always have a journey. I'm writing that down. I like that. Never have an end game. Always have a journey. That is really good wisdom for your younger one. All right, cool. I want to go into a lightning round of just a few questions.
Okay.
So just off the top of your head, what's your favorite movie? Which I know is so hard for like a movie expert. What's your favorite movie?
So I have a revolving list of, if I was to do a top 10, I have a revolving, 2 through 10 would constantly change. They would constantly revolve. But my favorite movie of all time, hands down, 1975's Jaws. And that is because it's just it's Spielberg at his absolute best. And it is when you look at the production of this film, it is about resiliency, because if the mechanical shark had worked like planned, we would have seen the shark throughout the movie. It never worked. Spielberg had to come up with ingenious ways of how to create the appearance of the shark through music, through the barrels, through all kinds of things. And that's what made him the filmmaker he is today. So I love Jaws. And it's because more so about the behind the scenes stories, about resiliency.
Okay, so that's cool, because it totally speaks to what you've been talking about today. Is like, he had basically nose, like in that movie. And I remember hearing about this, that the mechanical Jaws didn't work. If we would see it today, we wouldn't be scared, because we'd be like, that's a fucking mechanical shark. Like, we wouldn't be scared. But so he had nose. He had a plan. They're going to have a mechanical shark, got the nose, and people were like, well, we can't do it. And he's like, oh, no, we're going to figure this out. And then made it scarier and creepier than anything we could have ever imagined.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. When you get the nose, it's not a rejection. It's like, just what's next? Okay, love that. Jaws. Okay, good. What are you watching on TV these days?
What am I watching on TV these days? I'm just watching a lot of movies. But so if I was watching TV, I know this is rapid fire. So, baseball. I'm a huge baseball fan, and we just had opening day a couple days ago. So that baseball is the one sport where it doesn't matter what teams are playing, I can just watch the game. And I know that sounds crazy. Awesome. Most people think baseball is really boring to watch on TV. I love it. So I'm watching a lot of baseball right now.
Very cool. Okay, good. Are there any new movies that have come out this year? We're kind of been sheltered since we haven't been in theaters, but like since everything's getting released on, on demand and stuff. Is there anything new that's out that you're like, yes, definitely need to see this?
There's a lot of buzz going on with the Academy Awards coming up about No Man Land with Frances McDormand, which I think is, have you seen that film?
I haven't.
Okay. It is excellent. It is, I don't want to get it too much into what it is, but basically Frances McDormand loses her job and decides, instead of continuing to search for work, she just goes and just sort of lives off the land with like there are people that do this. They just travel in sort of caravans, and she's excellent in the film, and I definitely recommend that one. I was crazy about the Borat movie. I know that came out in November. I thought that
I loved it.
I thought that was phenomenal.
I laughed out loud so many times. So good.
And the fact that the young lady who played his daughter has been nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, I really, really hope she wins, because she was, you want to talk about fearless. She was fearless in that movie. And I was just a fan of hers. A couple other movies I've been watching. I'm catching up on some movies. The Sound of Metal, which is getting a lot of buzz. Again, incredible film. I just saw The Trial of the Chicago 7 a week ago. I'm so late to the party on that one. A lot of these movies are Oscar nominated, so I'm doing let me get caught up on everything that's Oscar nominated. Yes. So, that's a couple movies that I would definitely recommend.
Okay. Yeah. Trial of Chicago 7. I saw just won the SAG award last night. So definitely bodes well for that. Okay, good. This is great. Now, we've got our list of movies to watch, and I need to go revisit Jaws too. Okay, Dana, this has been awesome to interview you today. I love how your journey of life and the things you went through is so applicable to anyone who's listening, because we all go through this where we're like, we're in a journey of something, we want a result, we get no's. Like, it's just so great to hear your experience and be able to put it in perspective for anyone listening for whatever aspect they're working in their life. And I'm just excited for you for having the Dana Buckler Show as your podcast and Hollywood Unfiltered here on Fun for Life Radio. And I'm really, really happy you were here today. So thank you.
Awesome, Erin. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I love chatting with you, and I definitely look forward to talking again soon. So it's been awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, this is Rock Your Life with Arian Alexander, and I will see you next week.